Hey, we appreciate you joining us today, and thanks for supporting the
I
show.
appreciate you having me here. It's a great show. I haven't seen this dance setup before. I missed the last one, and it's awesome. It's pretty, very impressive, I would say. I'm sure you all agree.
Thank you, Jack. So, listen, we want to just spend a few minutes getting to know you. We didn't get to do an interview with you last year, so we want our customers, your customers, to get to know a little bit about you, your philosophies, what you kind of set out to achieve with the Division Point.
Okay.
So, tell us a little bit about your background, where you got interested in trains and model trains, and why you decided to be an importer.
I got interested in trains when I was about 14, I guess. Kid on the block was doing something after school, and I was doing nothing. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going down to watch the trains." And I looked at him kind of strangely and wondered what he was up to. And I started going down there after school, and I did that since then. So, for 50 years, I think, probably. Anyway, I got the interest in trains, and then I got a small Revell set. Maybe some of you guys remember Revell. They actually used to make HO stuff, and it was pretty lifelike. I bought a set of Revell Atlantic Coastline, still remember it. And then I didn't do anything for a while, and then after I got in college, I kind of came back to it as a reseller of brass models. I get into my first brass model, and I noticed that most of the brass, while it looked beautiful, it didn't run worth a darn. And so I resold it, and then I became a dealer for PBL, which had wonderfully running stuff, and pretty much got rid of everything else in favor of the SN3. And I did that for a long time. Then I started, a friend of mine at Red Caboose suggested that instead of reselling, I go to Korea and build a model. And we started an O-scale, and we did some drop-bottom gowns, I think, and some cabooses. I don't know if any O-scalers out there, but you might have some of those. Hard to find these days. And then from there, I moved into the RDC, which was my first powered model. A lot of people don't even know that, well, they don't know that Division Point exists in the first place, but they probably have never seen an RDC like that. And it was a beautiful model. The guy did a great job on it. But it was over there for about 2 years, and I never got anything for my money. And so finally, I decided to bite the bullet and go to Korea. And then I met a whole lot of nice people, and he completed that project. Then we were at a show in somewhere in up around Massachusetts somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it was. And I ran into Mr. Jang, Seiho Jang from Burim. And when he imported his Western Maryland 484, most beautiful engine I ever saw. Ran like a watch, and he and I started talking. We've become good friends. Actually, a lot of people don't know, but I've been dealing with Seiho for almost 25 years. I don't think anybody has ever had that kind of a relationship. Oh, sorry. With an importer, for that long. So we're like family friends, and I told him my stuff had to look good, but it also had to run good, because I don't want to be fixing all this stuff, even though I can. It takes too much time. So that was the way we started out the Division Point, and so far I'm not disappointed. Most of my stuff runs really well. I think you can attest to the fact that it sells pretty well when it comes up on your website.
It sells pretty well. And so that was like one of your main things is always you're a model railroader.
Right.
And so you wanted it to run well.
I did.
So I think sometimes people don't understand it's not just like that it runs well automatically, right? So what are some things you do to try to ensure that your models run well?
Well, when I lived in Vancouver, I actually worked for Van Hobbies in Vancouver, who at the time had brought in Sam Honks's first brass engine, the D10. I don't know if any of you remember that thing. It was an awful piece. He used to give them to me by the armload to go home and fix. And he said, if you can get it to run straight ahead and back on a 2-foot piece of track, I'll take it. And so I'd go home and he'd pay me, I can't remember what it was, 1972. So, he'd pay me about $10 a piece to fix the darn things. And he gave me just a box full of parts and everything else. And that's where I learned to take apart steam engines and put them back together and what it takes to do that. And then I got involved with Jimmy at PBL, and he did a wonderful series of mechanical tapes, how to solder, how to take models apart, how to make them run well. And anybody who hasn't seen that series should really do it. It's not hard to do this stuff, and it makes a huge difference in the way the things run.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse than having a beautiful layout and a very expensive steam engine or diesel, and watching it get halfway around the layout and then it stalls, and then you're over there pushing it with a stick or whatever, crawling across your layout, crushing trees as you go. It's not cool. It's not good to do that. So
I think we've all done it a time or two. Yeah.
That's right.
So, but like for example, the motor, is it like $5 to get a great motor?
No. My motors cost, they cost me usually between $60 and $80 a piece, just for the motor.
Right, and that's buying them in bulk, having connections.
That's correct.
And so I think it's kind of sometimes a misconception is, oh, it's just a motor or it's just a gearbox, but you have to have quality and it costs.
Absolutely. And the gearboxes, that's why I've generally stuck with the same builders over all the years, is because I trust them. They have their drives or their motors or their mechanisms are fairly bulletproof and have stood the test of time for all these years. So those are the guys I stay with, because you could probably get it done cheaper, but I'm sure to you guys it's not worth saving $5 when you got to mess with something or replace a motor, or the thing works about halfway around your layout and then it craps out. So I mean, we're always trying to improve things like that. Right now, the bar is pretty high in the brass model train market. There's not a whole lot more we can do. I tried adding, I think I was the first person to import a model with DCC and directional lighting and stuff like that. And when I got it, the model ran backwards and the lights came on in the wrong direction. And I sent it back to Mr. Cho at Odgen, and I said, forget this. We're just going to make it DCC compatible. Then everybody can use their own DCC system, whatever you like the best, if you want to put sound in it. But basically, mechanically and detail-wise, we're just about as far as we can go. There's not a whole lot else we can do to make things better,
So that's one of the things we appreciate about brass, is how even older models run very well. That's because they're very well engineered, very well designed, very well built,
Right.
And then we can adapt them with new technology.
Exactly. But that's why it's very important for all you guys that are modeling out there and have this huge investment in these little models, know how to take them apart and put them back together. If they're not running, get them to run right. Because in all honesty, you'd probably cringe if I told you how they got here. I mean, they get packed in this box and packed in that box and sent by ocean or sent by, now we send them by air. And then they get into UPS and the guy drop kicks it down your sidewalk and it lands on your front porch and then it arrives. So you better know how to fix things, or at least, be able to ask the right questions so you can take them apart. They're not hard to do. They're basically straightforward stuff that you can do. So.
Well, that's one of the things we appreciate about brass, is that it's enduring enough we can continue to work on it.
That's right.
And it goes. It's very durable overall.
And you can replace a motor or a universal joint or a rubber coupling or whatever we have in there. I don't really care what the mechanism we use to get the thing to run nice and smooth. as long as it can be replaced and it runs smoothly and quietly, that's all that's necessary.
Right.
So
So let's talk a little bit about you were a commercial airline pilot for
I
many years,
was.
right?
I was 27 years with Continental Airlines and another 3.5 years flying in Kazakhstan, Bangladesh, 767 flying to Europe. Flew the Hajj. If we have any of our Muslim brothers in here, I flew that for a year out of Bangladesh to Mecca and back. And,
So the importing's really been a passion, a hobby that you kind of turned into a business. Your
yeah,
your career is an airline pilot. Like most of the importers, it's not their career.
No.
It's something they've wanted to do. And so how do you keep kind of like that desire fueled to keep coming out with new projects and making sure they're excellent?
Oh, yeah, I think that's easy. I mean, any of you can come up with your favorite project that you want to do, and your favorite engine or your favorite train, or you read a book and you can find something quite easily. I got really mesmerized with European railroading, and as a matter of fact, I don't even model U.S. prototype anymore. I love the Swiss narrow gauge, and that's what I model in a couple of different scales, but the Europeans are still running wonderful trains over there, and I wish we could do as well in this country, but the distances are totally different here than they are in Europe. But if you haven't been, you need to go. You need to go to Switzerland or anywhere in Europe and just get on the trains. They're wonderful things to ride. The TGV, awesome. It's like being in first class on the best airline. It's a great experience.
Yeah, it
So,
is. It
yeah.
really is. So, but of course, I've known you a number of years.
Yes,
and
you have.
The scales change.
Yeah,
the roads
I'm-
change
I
because
am
you
a
just love
rubber scaler.
you love trains, right?
I do. I'm a rubber scaler. I got interested in Z because I can't imagine how they can make those little tiny things. They look like bugs running around, and they're perfectly accurate. N scale, awesome scale. Some absolutely beautiful stuff coming out in N scale. Even in American prototype now, lots of companies coming out with that. And then I've been into SN3, of course, S scale, SN3. OM is probably my main modeling. That's O meter gauge, but to European standards. Awesome stuff. Very expensive.
So, what's it all have in common? Would you say? What does it all have in common? All those scales, European.
It's all trains. It's all these
trains.
neat little things running around on the tabletop that we all love. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. I'm a lucky guy. I got to do two of my favorite things in the world for my whole life. I've flown airplanes and I've played with trains. And, fortunately for me, both of them have been fairly profitable. So I'm a happy camper.
Well, good for you. Now, it is a lot of, especially early importers, seem to be airline pilots.
That's true. That's
why
true.
why do you think that is? Is there a correlation there?
Well,
or?
I keep thinking back to some of you who've been around for long enough. Remember Dick Truesdale, who was West Side. He was a Pan Am captain. Dan McKee at Key Imports was a Western airline captain. Trying to think of our author friend who was also a Western airline captain.
There's been a few pilots.
Yeah, a few authors and pilots. Myself, trying to think of who else.
So do you think that opened up kind of just the willingness to travel, to go to Korea or Japan in some cases?
mean, when I flew in Kazakhstan, I flew from Almaty to Seoul, and I laid over for 6 days in Seoul. And so my good friend Seho would come and pick me up at the airport or at the hotel, and we go down to the factory and just work for 5 days.
Right.
And it's always a lot better if you're there to kind of honcho your own project and make sure you're getting stuff done the way you want it to be done.
Yeah, we've heard several of the importers say that travel is required.
You have to do it. You have to do it. And if you're working with our good Asian neighbors, that kind of face-to-face contact is important. You can't do it on the phone.
Now, we have some very talented builders here with us at this expo. One of them is Seho.
Yes.
Why do you think his projects are consistently so good. I mean, both for you and for other importers.
Because we keep beating them over the head with them until they're right. No, we make it hard for these guys. I mean, to see the work that they do in some of these models, and to see where they do it, you wouldn't even believe it. It's pretty amazing. It's amazing stuff. They are wonderful craftsmen. I can't recall any place else in the world where they can do this kind of stuff that's mechanically sound, along with being, a kind of a artistically beautiful work in brass.
Right, and we talked earlier, like John had a nice clinic on the hand builts,
Mm-hmm.
and we appreciate that. But this stuff's still pretty much all hand built, right? I mean, it's not coming out of an assembly line like a car or like a Franklin
it's really not,
Mint.
It's not built the way that you all remember probably being told that it was built. Like, you go to this big factory, and this floor is, they make handrails, and down here they paint the things, and there they put them together. It's not like that anymore. It's more subcontractors who do certain kind of work. They might do soldering work, so you give them all the pieces and they solder them all together, and then that work goes to somebody who's an assembler, and that work goes to somebody who's a painter. So this is a huge process, and it's not an easy process, and anything can go wrong at any particular point.
So that's where the orchestration of how this work is getting done.
Right.
And I guess the point I'm trying to get across, and I'm sure you'd agree, is it's very labor intensive. There's an incredible amount of work that goes into getting these models done.
I think once upon a time, a long time ago, I can't even remember who asked, but they were asking what it would take us to manufacture one of these models in the United States. I think it was Mort Mann. Mm-hmm. He actually inquired about the manufacturing process, and his estimation was probably about $10,000 a copy to do this work in the United States. So there's no way that we could do it here. It's not going to happen.
Right. And then we're going to touch on that a little bit more in the parlor car tonight. How really it would be difficult for just an average person to try to mimic this process, because there's so much work involved. And so we'll save that thought, but we do appreciate the effort that goes into it, both
Absolutely.
by the importers, the builders, the people behind the scenes building it, and it's an enjoyable hobby to be part of.
It is. It's a great hobby. I'm sure all these guys would certainly
That's why they're
agree.
here, right?
That's exactly it.
That's right.
why we're all here.